Delegates from African nations and institutions are meeting at the second G25 Coffee Summit, with an aim to boost domestic coffee production and enhance value addition in African state-producing countries with the ultimate goal of transforming the African coffee sector. President Museveni, while addressing the summit, urged raw material-producing nations to enhance their resources value domestically, such as coffee, to boost earnings, generate youth employment so that they earn more from their sweat instead of dying in the Mediterranean going to Europe for the market.
You wonder, how can Africans accept this? So I stopped all this. I said, if you are not ready to process, let it stay in the ground. It has been there for 2 million years. It can stay there for another 100 years until you are ready to process it yourselves.
Empowering 3.5 million Ugandan families, coffee is a lifeline. While 60% of Uganda's coffee finds its way to the European market, its local consumption remains low, rivaled only by Ethiopia. Recognizing this potential, the European Union has invested 45 million euros in Uganda for research and development, paving the way for transformative projects. Now, envision Uganda as a prime beneficiary of the colossal 150 billion euros of the African Europe Gateway project.
3.5 million families depend on the coffee sector for their livelihood. 3.5 million. And around 60% of your coffee is exported to the EU. And that is why I think coffee is such an important link between Uganda and the European Union. But in Africa, you do not drink much coffee, with the exception, of course, of Ethiopia and a couple of other countries. Actually, your coffee consumption is one of the lowest in the world, but this means there is a great potential in increasing it. Apart from the economic benefit you would gain, Africa would also gain power as a price setter, like other producing countries with a considerable home consumption, such as Brazil and India. Supporting the coffee sector by investing in research and innovation, by promoting climate-smart agricultural practices, and by stimulating sustainable production, marketing, and consumption. Over the 5 past years, our support has reached almost 45 million euros. In addition, the EU is piloting corporate sustainability due diligence in the coffee sector in Uganda and other African countries. The lessons learned will be used to further develop our support to stakeholders in partner countries, in implementing due diligence, and in managing the impact of EU regulations in this field. And let me advertise a very interesting panel on this topic on Thursday. Our support to the coffee sector is part of our partnership with Africa. The EU is committed to leverage investments through the Africa-Europe Global Gateway investment package, worth at least 150 billion euros by 2027. The rollout of the package has started, and it includes support to partner countries in boosting their local production and decrease their dependence on expensive and unsustainable agricultural inputs. As part of our support, the EU and the African Union are looking at identifying a number of strategic value chains to be promoted, and coffee is one of those selected as a priority for Uganda and for many other African countries.
Despite coffee's potential as a livelihood for 60 million Africans, only 12% of the global coffee output is from Africa. Value chain inequality hampers Africa, which gains only 0.6% of the value, operating at the low end of the supply chain as a green bean exporter. Challenges include weak infrastructure and logistics, hindering domestic consumption. A case in point is South Africa, that only imports coffee from Brazil.
Because it is increasing the import bill and making coffee consumption within Africa more expensive. Excellencies, there are 2 factors inhibiting the full implementation of the Inter-African Continental Free Trade Agreement, namely infrastructure and lack of investment in the value addition. For instance, Nigeria, with a population of 221 million, almost similar to Brazil, has a huge untapped market and could serve as a prime consumer of African coffee. However, due to lack of adequate infrastructure, coffee exporters from East Africa to Nigeria by ship can take maybe more than 7 months. Another prime example in South Africa, which has huge potential for African coffee, but it imports primarily from Brazil and Europe. This is the trend in many of our African countries.
Renana Habwe, SMART24 TV, Business Today.